point that has to be understood. Either the great powers, United States, China, Russia, India, either they'll cooperate or else we'll all be destroyed. You can't have wars between major powers. Even the country that carried out a first strike would itself be destroyed. As a background question, will the question even arise? Remember that we're moving towards very likely destruction of organized human life on Earth. You can't put it off. We had a couple of decades in which we can hope to overcome the growing crisis of environmental destruction. There's a growing threat of nuclear war. The chances that my great-grandchildren will have a recognizable world to live in are not very high. So the question whether the United States will overcome its current problems, serious question, affects not only the United States but the whole world because of U.S. power. But there's a background against which all such questions arise. You can't overlook that. It's a very simple point that has to be understood. Either the great powers, United States, China, Russia, India, either they'll cooperate or else we'll all be destroyed. That's the simple truth. Nothing. They understand it very well. There was actually an article recently in Australia by Paul Keating, former Prime Minister, a well-known international relations specialist. And the article was about Australia. He says, why does Australia find China a threat? And he went through the various reasons, and he finally ended up by saying, the threat of China is that it exists. For the United States, that's even more of a threat. It exists, doesn't follow orders, goes on its own path. There are plenty of crimes that you can mention, but that's not what bothers anyone. The United States supports much greater crimes. The reason is, as Paul Keating said, it's there. It's there, follows its own path. It's not like Europe. The United States imposes sanctions on some country. Europe doesn't like them, but they obey. China doesn't obey. Well, that's not tolerable. If you're running the world, everybody has to obey. As I said, it's insanity. You can't have a war with either of them and expect to survive. You can't have wars between major powers. Even the country that carried out a first strike would itself be destroyed, even there was no retaliation, just by nuclear winter. It's unthinkable. They must work together. This is the 2018 strategic policy, which was expanded under Biden. So yes, it's beyond insanity. However, if you look at history, states have not been interested in security. You can show that over and over. They're interested in power and the power of the dominant sectors within them. This goes back as far as you look. They constantly sacrifice security. If you mean security, the population, that's not a high priority. It's unfortunately all too easy to demonstrate this. Let's just look at the options. Can't predict. Either there will be a diplomatic settlement or there won't be. Can't argue about that. If there's no diplomatic settlement, two possibilities. Either there'll be a stalemate in which they grind each other down, like in Bakhmut recently, or else one side or the other will capitulate. Well, which side is going to capitulate? It's not going to be Russia. Russia has ultimate weapons. If it's ever under threat, can always escalate without limit. Is Ukraine going to capitulate? Not as long as the United States carries out the war. The U.S. also has ultimate weapons. So the only answer that is not horrific is a diplomatic settlement. Well, the United States at the moment doesn't want that. It claims that we have to continue the war to weaken Russia and, as they put it, put Ukraine in a better negotiating position. Well, the only one hope, I think, is the Chinese program that was proposed a couple of weeks ago. It was dismissed by the United States, but it shouldn't have been. It doesn't answer everything by any means, but it's based on the principle that the integrity of every territory must be preserved, including Ukraine, as Chinese officials emphasized. Okay, that's a strong principle, but it seems to me that's a starting point, not the end. It's just the bare beginning. Diplomacy is going to be very difficult, and the longer the war goes on, the harder it gets. Exactly what we must do. There are repeated points in history where there are ways to move towards what you just described. There are power interests which block them. Populations should be pressing for them and can make progress in that direction. Furthermore, they have to do it or we're all going to be destroyed. There are no boundaries to environmental destruction. There are no boundaries to likely pandemics, no boundaries to nuclear war. They don't exist. So there must be accommodation.